Hello, everyone. I'm Bridget Cook-Burch, and I'm so excited to introduce you to this very lovely and extraordinary woman, Jade Oster, who is bringing forth her book that I'm delighted for you to share because it's an extraordinarily unusual journey in so many ways, and yet it might not. So, Jade, go ahead and tell us the title of your book.
My book's title is Strange Roads: Why I Turned My Back on God and How He Finally Brought Me Home.
Wow. So how did you change or decide on that particular title? What was it about that title that intrigued you?
It was all the way back to my studies of the scriptures and how people in their journey toward God sometimes get sidetracked and they go off on different routes, different roads that can lead them away from God. So the book is a story of my adventures, my journey on strange roads, and how I was able to find my way back with God's help.
Beautiful. So tell us, what were some of those strange roads that you encountered? What were you looking for, and how did you try to find it in the beginning?
Well, I kind of had a tragic childhood, and so I didn't really have a lot of guidance when I was growing up, and I think it's very different being raised outside of a church and outside of a family that doesn't really go to church or care about going to church or just goes through the motions. And I really think that it's been a lifelong search for me to find my way home. And there were a lot of times when it looked like I wasn't going to make it back, that I was kind of stuck. Probably traveling on a road that I didn't know where it was taking me, but I knew I was very unhappy.
Mhm. So you mentioned in your back of the book blurb where some of these strange roads took you as well, like being a hostess at a Korean bar, an exotic dancer. Then you went into the military, and then you also did some extraordinary things in the medical field. You became a nurse, and then you became a medical doctor. Like many people don't traverse that same path, but that was quite extraordinary for you. And so in discussing all of this with your reader and in sharing, like, who are you reaching with this book? Whose heart do you want to touch?
I think it's been such a dramatic change in my life when I finally found my way home with a lot of help from my Heavenly Father. I really think He just didn't give up on me. He really came after me, and He was very patient with me. If you read the book, you can see He was very patient with me. And it really was like I had to learn that these roads that I was traveling on, these choices, these decisions that I made, didn't bring me happiness. It wasn't where I wanted to be, but I felt lost. I felt I don't know how to change my life for it to be better. And I missed my Heavenly Father. I really, really missed Him. And I really felt like maybe I'm not worthy enough to come home. And that really held me back for a very long time.
Yeah, you've kind of mentioned being a prodigal daughter, and
Yes.
how surprising even that it was that you were invited back home. And so
Yes.
so who is it that you're wanting to reach and touch with this message?
Well, I think there's probably a lot of other people out there that are very much like me. We get caught up with life. We get caught up with the people around us telling us what we should do, who we should be, what it's almost as if we give up our own goals and the things that we want for ourselves and let other people tell us what we should do. And it comes down to making authentic choices and learning through your choices that you do making mistakes, what works and what doesn't work for you. The people that that I wrote the book for are probably other people that have experienced the same thing I have, that for whatever reason they left the church, left God, turned their back on God. And I'm just trying to encourage them that it doesn't have to be that way, that they can come home, that even if they don't feel that they're worthy, that maybe they feel like they've gone too far away from God, that there's always a way to come home. There's always a way to come back to him. And he's welcoming of all his children to come home.
Wow. So for a Christian audience, so for a reader who has walked their own strange roads and maybe feels like they cannot come home, this book will be compelling and powerful. I love that you're so honest and real and authentic and raw in places. You also have a heck of a sense of humor that you allow to come into play with mistakes, with learnings, with lessons, right? And yes. I think that's an indelible part of who you are. Like, you can't talk with you for more than 5 minutes without a lot of laughter erupting. And you have a lot of self-deprecating humor, which is great. But I also love the invitation, knowing, now you're not alone. And so being able to share this message with others. I love what you said about, because I think there are times where we all feel unworthy. So that is amazing. So you knew you wanted to write this book, and you knew who you wanted to write it to, and you knew why now was the time. Tell me, was there a specific life event where you just said, you know what, I've got to write this book? Was there something that really compelled you?
I think what compelled me was after I came back to having a relationship with God, I realized what a big difference it had made in my life. And I was thinking, wow, I wasted all those years. All those years I was not in a covenant relationship with my father. And I couldn't believe how I'd almost been tricked into thinking that I wasn't worthy, that happiness was found out there. It's that FOMO, fear of missing out. And when I came back, I realized, wow, I wish I had come back earlier. I really wish I had come back many, many years ago. And in fact, I wish I had never left. That was the big thing. But it was almost that in order to really appreciate my covenant relationship with God, I actually had to leave him and be away from him for a while to see the difference of what it was like to be without him and to miss him.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I had a coach once who told me, as humans, in our greatest darkness lies the seeds to our greatest glory. And I think that you traversed a lot of dark and strange roads to really find your light. It's been amazing and wonderful, and even to watch you unfold and develop while you were writing. I wanted to ask you if there were any particular scenes or one scene that really sticks out in your mind of, sitting down and knowing that you got to write this out. Tell me about writing that scene and what it was like for you to express yourself in such a way.
Um, First of all, it was difficult. It was difficult. Um, I should have paid more attention in English class. I really should have. It's like if I'd known that I was going to write a book one day, I would have really studied harder and paid more attention. It was incredible to sit down and write things that happened in my life, and it wasn't always easy. It wasn't always easy because it's hard to go back and review your life like that, especially when you're at my age of, well, I was writing the book when I was 64 and it's finishing now, I'm 65. But when you're at my age, you can look back and say, oh my goodness, how could I have done that? You know, it's like, boy, that was a stupid decision. You know, you wonder at your choices. It's like, why did I do that? But it's like I had to go through it to learn it. And that's the thing, you know, you make good choices and you make bad choices, and there's consequences, you know, there's consequences for all your choices. And it's like I had to see the consequences of my bad choices to realize, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to do that. There's a better way. Let me try something that I know is better.
Yeah, and you spend a lot of your life learning and then taking a new step in your evolution, and then learning and then taking another step in your evolution. You know, it's extraordinary the things that you have done, and the world you have traversed in being able to become who you are. And what I love is like the full fleshed out character of Jade. You know, who you were and who you have become is extraordinary in my eyes and in my heart. Just knowing your stories and these different areas of your life that you really have survived so much more than what most people would have had to have survived. And then all the creative ways in which you were working to overcome until you realized what was really missing. And so the reader's going to have a fun journey along the way, full of a lot of humor, a lot of self-deprecating humor. But also, I love the depth to which you have allowed yourself that, you know, some authors would try to have a mystique about them, or they would not go deep and vulnerable, but because of who you want to reach, you know, knowing that there's others who are out there maybe floundering and struggling, you decided that you would go so raw in this. So I'd love to ask you, in the writing of it, in terms of your own character and what you saw, what you experienced, what you learned from, was there anything that came as a surprise to you?
I was just completely clueless when I started writing this book. I just wrote it and wrote it and wrote it, and I just the first draft of the book, I wrote it for myself. I didn't write it for anybody else. I wrote down, this is my story, this is what happened, this is what happened next. And of course, I forgot some things, and then I had to go back and put them in. But it was just a question of getting it all down and then trying to make sense of it. Because this was new for me, and this was what the surprise was. I look back and it's like, oh, that's how I made that choice. I didn't realize that maybe things that had happened in my childhood had led me to make choices that I probably, if I'd had a healthier childhood, I wouldn't have made those choices. I learned from writing the book to be less hard on myself, because I used to blame myself for everything. And then going back along the timeline, it's like, oh, so that led to this, led to this, led to this. And it's like steps. And if any one of those, like maybe some tragic things that happened to me, had been taken out of my childhood, I wouldn't have gone down that road. And I think that was very freeing to me to write it all out and to see it and to. I also wonder if God had a really good hand in having me write this book to become more at peace with myself and maybe not blame myself, too much for choices that I made in my puppy years. But now that I'm older and wiser, I realize how really ridiculous and crazy some of those decisions were. But I also know that I'm not alone. I'm sure there's a lot of other people out here that have taken one step after another that they weren't. It's not like they're bad or anything. It's that's what their life dealt them. I mean, that's the cards they were dealt, and this is what happened as a result of those things. And I think that's what's important that I learned, and I wanted to share that with my readers, that like in the beginning of the book, I wrote down that the book is dedicated to my readers, that they may know that mercy and forgiveness know no boundaries. And I really do believe that their mercy and forgiveness from our Heavenly Father in Jesus Christ know no boundaries.
Beautiful. Because you deserved mercy and forgiveness, and you have been able to find it, which has been an amazing and unique road.
Absolutely astonishing to me that I really thought I wasn't going to be able to come back to God. I really, really believed it for many, many years. And then to find out that Father was actively inviting me to come home. And I was absolutely astonished and so very thankful and grateful.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I found really compelling as part of your conflict character arc and the threads of story was, because of your childhood, the mother that you decided to become, the and the decisions that you made along the way. How many children do you have?
Well, between my husband and me, we have 8, but I personally have birthed 6.
Yeah. And who you decided to become as a mother, and how you decided to get there. And, from the time of your 2 daughters in the beginning to more recently, like all the things, all the choices that you made so that they would have a different life than you had. And
absolutely.
Yeah, so it goes to show that there are multiple levels of overcoming, and this was one of those areas that is so fantastic to see. You seed throughout the book, but how and where and why you would show up for your children in specific ways, and how you finally learned what it was to show up for yourself. So that is
Yes.
really beautiful. I would like to know what is the biggest thing you would want your reader to know about you?
I would like them to know that I'm basically very much like them, that we're kind of walking the same road. We're all travelers here in this life, and we all make mistakes. We all struggle. And life can be really hard. It can be really, really hard for everyone, for each one of us. I just want my reader to know that they're not alone. They're not alone. They have Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ, even if they don't feel that they're there and that they're concerned for them. They actually are, because I spent a great deal of my life thinking my Heavenly Father didn't know me, didn't care about me, didn't want me, and that is so not the way it actually is. And I was only able to find that when I came back.
Beautiful. Okay. And Jade, a very important question. What is your message of hope to your reader? What is your message of hope to the world?
God is always reaching out to us. What matters is that we reach back to him. And that was your very profound addition.
Thank you. Yeah, from my own strange roads to yours.
Yes.
Yeah, so understanding that. But I love that you have claimed this, because it has been your reaching back that made such a huge difference and will be such an extraordinary read for anyone who picks up your book. In fact, one of the things I would like to ask is, what do you feel are the promises that you can make to a reader if they're to read your book? What will they find within themselves?
It really matters how you treat other people, including yourself. I knew I was never going to be happy until I was able to go into the light. I really knew I was not going to be happy. If I could just touch it, I knew I could be happy. But I kept beating myself against the wall, kept flying right into that wall, that glass wall. I could see the light, but I couldn't touch it. But then one day I made a different decision, that rather than flying straight at that wall and beating myself on it, I opened a door. And that's when my whole life changed.